Forever is composed of nows. The big Schlockta sat with his hands on his knees, his back ramrod straight, looking Gerard straight in the eyes with an intensity that made the Imperial Auditor of the Imperial Treasury uncomfortable. LaSalle always did his best not to let his dislike of the old campaigner colour his judgment, but Mladen did not make it easy. So you're prepared to come back for one last job again? Gerard's sarcasm was clearly lost on the Varushkan. Yes, the Empire is threatened on all sides by enemies, and it is more important than ever that we do not leave anything in the pantry that could be on the table with the pickle bread. Gerard sighed inwardly. Leontes was bad enough, with all those marcher proverbs that he was pretty sure were made up on the spot. Mladen was another of the same ilk. They only did it to annoy him, he was reasonably certain. What kind of support would you need? Asked Gerard, glancing down at the ledgers piled to either side of him. Whenever he finished collating and summarising the imperial accounts for one summit, it was immediately time to start again. Mladen stiffened, which was an impressive feat for a man who was generally as flexible as cast iron and weathered oak. Don't worry, it won't cost you any money, he spat bitterly. Gerard made a noise halfway between exasperation and irritation. That's not what he began, but Mladen interrupted his senior colleague. The problem with your office is that you understand only the cost of things, not their worth. Mladen had expressed these sentiments before. When you consider costs at all, half the prognosticators you have today seem to see it as a virtue to discount the straightforward in favour of the baroque, spurn the traditional in favour of the novel. And where does it get us? The Senate expressing real concerns about the collapse of the economy is where it gets us. Mladen, we've had this conversation before, and all I'm offering to do is to come out of retirement one last time to clean up the mess created by an approach to appraisal that relies so heavily on coming up with new ways to do things that almost before the work is presented, it is out of date. And you start talking about budgets and money and what it will cost your office. That is very much not what I said, and Gerard took a breath and calmed himself. This was why he had been happy to see the back of Mladen, and why he privately wished the man would just stay retired. It wasn't that the Varushkan was a bad man. Around other members of the civil service, he was civil and constructive, and he'd given good service in his day. He just didn't like Gerard, any more than the auditor liked him. So any conversation always ended in an argument about budgets. They could barely exchange a good morning when passing the hall without reigniting a bitter disagreement about a proposal from 15 years ago. Look, said Gerard in a conciliatory tone. You suggested working with the Imperial Master of Works, and that's an excellent idea. It's a good initiative, and in most cases the work has already been done. You're just going to revisit things and check that they will still work. It'll be good for the general good, and while budgets are tight at the moment, it won't add any extra costs. I'll just record you as part of the Master's staff. Mladen looked pleased and stood, a complicated motion that involved a lot of creaking and sharp intakes of breath. I'll get started then, he said in a tone that indicated he felt he'd won a victory over the hated accountant. And I'll do my best to ensure any work is budget neutral. He clearly considered that parting shot to be some sort of stinging rebuke, but Gerard took it at face value, nodded, and smiled as the Varushkan left his office. He did like things that were budget neutral, after all. Overview. One of the powerful tools available to the Senate is the ability to commission an appraisal. The prognosticator's office works with the rest of the civil service and with imperial citizens, foreign representatives, and even heralds of the eternal realms to try and find solutions to problems plaguing the empire. Once the investigation is complete, they present opportunities to overcome obstacles, achieve ambitious goals, or improve the prosperity of the empire. There are limits to what the civil service can achieve, however, and competition for the resources of the prognosticator's office is often fierce. There are only a handful of prognosticators at a time, and in recent months they have become a little stretched with retirements, in-depth long-term projects, and at least one sabbatical disappearance. With that in mind, several opportunities have been discussed relating to the Department of the Civil Service responsible for establishing, evaluating, and presenting opportunities. The Mladen Initiative. Retired prognosticator Mladen Eskovich offers to work with the Imperial Master of Works to review opportunities related to fortifications. The opportunity makes use of their existing ability to prepare an announcement for the Senate. It is available only during the winter solstice. The title of the Imperial Master of Works is currently vacant. Over the years, there has been a lot of work done designing plans for fortifications in all corners of the Empire. Many of those designs were based on now outmoded approaches to the castle building sciences. While the more recent opportunities are easily revisited, there are dusty plans stretching back years that are now effectively obsolete. Some came from exotic sources such as Eternals, while others were put together based on specific situations that are now either moot or no longer current. In theory, it should be possible to recreate some of those opportunities in light of the new developments, but doing so is likely to be a pain in the arse, to be indelicate. The prognosticator's office has been very cautious. There is no way, they say, to look at every castle building opportunity as part of a single appraisal. There's no reason new appraisals regarding the defence of a particular territory or nation might not be raised by the Imperial Senate, and they would obviously look at earlier opportunities as part of their work. But simply going back and looking over every opportunity is unfeasible. Enter Mladen Eskovich, retired prognosticator. Since leaving full-time service in the prognosticator's office, he has done a little freelance work, including the recent appraisal regarding the vulnerabilities of the Druge military. The old campaigner has offered to come out of retirement again to do one last job. In this case, to go over existing opportunities to create fortifications and update them. Or, more specifically, he's prepared to work with the Imperial Master of Works in this matter. They already have the ability to make an announcement to the Senate regarding the repair and improvement of fortifications. Mladen proposes they use this power to select 3 existing opportunities that involve building a new fortification or improve an existing one. At the spring equinox, Mladen will present his findings as to how the Empire can take advantage of those opportunities, despite recent changes. Mladen is not a patient man. Should the Imperial Master of Works wish to take advantage of his offer, they will need to do so during the winter solstice. Awkwardly, the position of Imperial Master of Works is currently vacant, so the Military Council will need to appoint someone to the role if they wish to see previous opportunities for fortifications revisited. The LaSalle stratagem. Gerard LaSalle plans to employ an additional prognosticator while Elian Sweetwater is indisposed. There will be an administrative motion on Saturday afternoon for the Senate to choose which candidate they want to recruit. At the moment, there are 3 prognosticators with experience and resources to perform an appraisal for the Senate. Technically, there is also Elian Sweetwater, but he has been granted a leave of absence to investigate historical lighthouses. And before he could get very far with that, he and his companions went missing in Redoubt. They may be prisoners of the Grendel, or they might be in the hands of a Winter Eternal, or, well, anything really. Such is the life of a prognosticator. The recent appraisal concerning ministries commissioned during the summer solstice has seen Graciana y Lopez Higuera caught up in an intensive and detailed assessment of the various ministries. For the last 6 months, then, the weight of the entire prognosticator's office has fallen on the shoulders of Naomi of Virtue's Rest and Lutomisla Negoslava. They have managed the workload well enough, but some cracks are showing here and there. With that in mind, the Imperial Auditor proposes to hire someone to work in the prognosticator's office until Elian Sweetwater returns to active duty. He has shortlisted 3 possible candidates for the Senate to consider. LaSalle's office has prepared a short dossier introducing each individual and covering their strengths and weaknesses. The Imperial Auditor is quick to reassure the Senate that there will be no increase to the cost of running the prognosticator's office, while Elian is on sabbatical. At the Saturday afternoon Senate session, an administrative motion will be raised to allow the Senate to decide which expert they deem the most useful. If the Senate selects one of these candidates, they will be able to deploy them during the winter solstice if they wish. Candidates. Lisanne de Terresford. Lisanne is an ideal prognosticator to look for virtuous solutions to problems. She will not pursue avenues she considers to be fundamentally unvirtuous. The Terres is a narrow river that runs through Semerholm, and House Terresford is a relatively minor noble house that looks after the ford. They are not an especially old house, dating back to the time of Emperor Hugh, but they have a reputation among the yeofolk for being even-handed and loyal. Lisanne de Terresford is currently Earl of the House, but has been looking for a successor for some time. Earlier this year, she found one, and is now preparing to retire and spend her time keeping bees. Gerard Lassalle plans, with Senate approval, to approach her with an eye towards joining the prognosticator's office on a temporary basis. Before becoming Earl, Lassalle visited Anvil many times and was intimately involved with the doings of the Synod. She was known for her wisdom and for her commitment to asking questions rather than taking easy answers. Gerard believes she will add a much-needed spiritual perspective to the business of the prognosticators, being an ideal appraiser to look for specifically virtuous solutions to the problems that the Senate raises. If she has a weakness, it is that she will not pursue avenues she considers to be fundamentally unvirtuous, even if they might present an easier or cheaper opportunity. Rosemary Stockland. Rosemary is an ideal prognosticator to look for mercantile solutions to problems. She will pursue opportunities that involve trade in which all parties gain. Stockland is a region of Upwold, well known for its fair and for its sheep and cattle markets. For the last 20 years, Rosemary Stockland has served as an elder of the town, maintaining the peace and dealing with arguments between merchants from many parts of the empire. A former bailiff of the Grand Market, she is known for plain speaking and cutting to the heart of any problem. She is also renowned for her patience. While she may not suffer fools gladly, she still does her best to get to the bottom of what it is they're after. It's been 3 decades since she was last at Anvil, but reports say she still keeps an eye on the doings at the centre of the empire, especially with regards to the bourse. Indeed, she was heavily involved with the cow bonds issued earlier this year during spring cattle drives, helping ensure that the scheme went off without any obvious hitches. If Gerard approaches her to come and work with the prognosticator's office, he's sure she will agree. As a merchant, and more importantly perhaps a manager of merchants, she has contacts across the empire. She's also interested in the idea of prosperity as a right of every imperial citizen, and would be an excellent choice for any appraisals that focus on improving the quality of life of imperial citizens, establishing trade routes, or sorting out diplomatic snarls related to mercantile matters. If she has a weakness, it is that solutions she provides are likely to be based on mercantile arrangements that reward all parties involved. Vena Coma Dawnstone. Vena Coma is an ideal prognosticator to look for solutions to military problems. She will pursue opportunities that involve employing imperial armies in novel ways. As Suak, born and raised in Hanmark, Vena Coma cut her teeth as an imperial soldier in the Green Shield, serving with distinction through the reign of Emperor Walter and Empress Britta. She retired from active duty after the loss of the young Empress. More recently, she helped with the mustering and training of the Narwhal Spear, but ultimately declined to take up the military life again. Lassalle describes her as a woman who is always looking for something to throw herself into, and one who absolutely relishes a challenge. She combines the mind of an expert logistician with the instincts of a canny hunter. Vena Coma has a great deal of experience in the imperial military, and a deep familiarity with the unique talents of the Empire's armies. She would be an excellent choice for an appraisal that involved novel military problems or strategic challenges. But her solutions are likely to require the use of imperial armies to achieve the goals. Budget matters. The Imperial Senate could instruct Gerard to take on all 3 prognosticators on a permanent basis. Doing so would increase the upkeep cost of the prognosticator's office by 6 thrones a season. Additional prognosticators would give the Senate more options to choose between. It would not allow for more appraisals. Gerard can afford the temporary secondment of one of these 3 candidates, but candidly would prefer to bring all of them into the civil service. The wider the range of prognosticators, he says, the more options the Senate has, and the less strain is placed on the individual civil servants, who often have to spend months at a time in the field in often quite stressful situations. Temporary secondment would allow one of the 3 to join the office for as long as Elian Sweetwater is on sabbatical, and they would retire once the Navarre historian returned to active duty, assuming he survives the apparently dangerous matter of looking at lighthouse ruins. The Senate could choose to instruct Gerard to approach all 3 candidates, to offer each of them a permanent position with the prognosticator's office. If this were done, Gerard would be able to retain all 3 potential recruits even when Elian returns to work. The downside is that it would increase the upkeep of the prognosticator's office by 6 thrones. The money would cover both the expenses for the prognosticators and for a larger staff of dedicated civil servants supporting them. Hiring additional prognosticators would not give the Senate the ability to conduct more appraisals, but it would mean that they have more options to choose between. Opportunity knocks again. If the Senate increases the prognosticator's budget, then there is an additional opportunity to expand the powers of the Master of the Mint. The civil service will raise an administrative motion to amend the Master of the Mint to give them the power to review a previous appraisal or opportunity. The Senate could use a Senate motion to grant this power to a different Senate position. The current Master of the Imperial Mint is Tristan Ramsson von Holberg. There is another opportunity here as well. If the office were expanded, there would be more prognosticators not involved in appraisals, as well as more staff available. Taking inspiration from Ladin's offer regarding fortifications, Gerard has another proposal for the Senate to consider. The Master of the Imperial Mint could be given the power to commission a kind of mini-appraisal. Rather than addressing a new problem, the office would look at a previous opportunity offered to the Empire and assess whether it was still accessible, or under what conditions it might be made so. This would result in an entry in the Winds of Fortune looking at a single opportunity, such as a commission from an earlier Wind of Fortune, that is no longer available. The civil service would determine how to refresh that opportunity. For opportunities arising from within the Empire, they might be able to simply prepare a new proposal or confirm that the old proposal is still practical. For those coming from Eternals or foreign nations, they will at least be able to point out a reasonable path to approach the matter. If the Senate instruct Gerard to expand his team and increase the upkeep of the office accordingly, then the civil service will raise an administrative motion at the next session to amend the title of Master of the Mint to give them the power to select a single opportunity to reassess. After some discussion amongst the Constitutional Court, advice is given that while Gerard has selected the Master of the Imperial Mint as the obvious candidate to receive this power, it could instead be given to any member of Senate in good standing, including the Throne, Conscience of the Senate, Imperial Magus, Advisor on Orc Affairs, or Imperial Consul. A senator would need to raise a Senate motion to name the title whose powers they wish to amend, if they prefer to select a different office to receive the power. There is nothing to stop the Senate keeping the power for themselves. They would determine which opportunity to revisit via a Senate motion. What they can't do is give a senator the ability to make an announcement to use the power in that way. The method for senators to wield political power is via Senate motion. OOC note. One of the challenges of a game like Empire, that has been running for over a decade with multiple Winds of Fortune every event, is keeping track of opportunities offered. Sometimes the actual rules of the game change in a way that means an earlier opportunity is no longer available, as with the recent changes to the fortification rules, or details of how the Valorn may be fought. Other times, the situation has changed significantly. The opportunity to fortify Sarcombe being presented before 2 years of war saw the town conquered and liberated. At the moment, the only way to check in on an opportunity is to email profound decisions, which is ultimately unsatisfactory, not least because the outcome is likely to be either a binary yes or no. Many other opportunities are designed with a 1-year sunset clause that means they are no longer available after a certain point, even though there is not always a narrative reason they should not be. The idea of this power is that, if the Senate wishes, they can refresh an existing opportunity without needing to commission an entire new appraisal. It's not possible to ask for a refresh on an entire Wind of Fortune, but pointing to a specific opportunity, such as the third pie in Mornwold, or the opportunity to establish a certain trade route, allows us to review that opportunity quickly and come up with an in-character answer that is then available to everyone. As with an appraisal, our attention is, wherever possible, will provide something constructive in response to this request to refresh an opportunity. And, if for whatever reason it's not possible to do that due to changes in the game or the rules, we will provide some direction as to how something similar might be achieved. The Abraham Gambit. The Throne can use an announcement in the Senate to instruct the civil service to appraise the constitutional implications of a new sodality. This appraisal will not count against the limit of the Empire's appraisals. The power is available for the next year. Creating an imperial sodality is a significant undertaking for the Senate, in that each has a potential to greatly change the political landscape of the Empire. It is a constitutional vote, and one that requires ratification by a throne. Creation of an imperial sodality is often controversial, however. The Senate is arguably reticent to create sodalities due to uncertainty about what a new organization might portend, as seen recently with the constitutional implications of the Magpies, Valorn Guard, and Imperial Apothecaries Guild. There is nothing to stop the Senate from instructing the Prognosticator's Office to undertake an appraisal into the implications of a new sodality were it to be created, but they can only commission 2 such investigations each season, and there are always other demands on this limited resource. Since the autumn equinox, the Constitutional Court has been discussing the situation and have hit upon a potential solution. The throne's ratification is a required element of any imperial sodality, so it is the opinion of Magistrate Abraham that the civil service should offer them what assistance they can in determining whether to recognize new bodies. Starting with the winter solstice, Abraham, a constitutional scholar, and Leontes the scribe, the imperial archivist and an expert at navigating the libraries of the empire, will divert some of their attention to the matter of a sodality. Each season for the next year, the throne can make a Senate announcement instructing Abraham and Leontes to look into the potential implications of a single new imperial sodality. The only requirement is that the proposed sodality must have a name, a symbol, and a clear manifesto in the style of those expressed by any conclave order. This manifesto must consist of 3 concise claims that the sodality believes to be true, followed by 3 clear statements expressing what the sodality exists to do. In addition, they must have a symbol that will be used to represent the sodality. The throne needn't recite the entire manifesto as part of their announcement, but one must be submitted in writing to the Constitutional Court shortly after the end of the summit. OOC note: emailed by the throne to plot@profounddecisions.co.uk before downtime closes following the event. The manifesto must be complete and precise. The job of the civil service is made infinitely harder if they need to speculate over what a particular element of a manifesto might mean. It must also be precise in that it is the actual wording that will make up the sodality manifesto, rather than a list of alternatives or possible manifesto items. Abraham and Leontes will work with other civil servants to examine the manifesto and lay out the implications of what an imperial sodality based on it would look like. They might propose amendments to the manifesto that would have different effects, or confirm potential benefits and pitfalls that will arise if the sodality is created. This will take the form of an appraisal, which will be released to the Empire before the next summit. The 2 court members are prepared to commit to make the facility available for the next year. Whether the civil service have the capacity to support the arrangements beyond that point is a matter of disagreement between Leontes and Abraham. The former publicly opines that there is no reason they shouldn't be able to keep doing it after that point if it proves useful to the throne. After all, he says gloomily, we'd probably have to do the work anyway. It's just a matter of when we would have to do it. And at least this way, the Senate can see what they are buying before they get their sack home and discover it is full of rats. Abraham seems more circumspect, at least for now, arguing that the civil service can't offer the support indefinitely until they know how much work it takes. The aging magistrate seems to have gotten his way, at least for now. OOC note: if you want to send a letter to the Emperor about your sodality, they're happy to receive them, but please send it to vesna.borkovna.prognost@gmail.com rather than direct messaging. It's also important to remember that Vesna is a player character and has a very busy real-life job as well as being the Imperial throne. Design note: as should have become clear, the creation of Imperial sodality is a significant step. Each one has constitutional implications and cannot help but reflect a shifting of power from one house to another. Rather than ambush the Senate with the implications of a new sodality, one they have given legal powers to without knowing what they are, we want to create a route towards dispelling this uncertainty. In essence, we will write the wind of fortune that we're currently writing after the sodality is created, before the sodality is created. The crucial requirement here is that the 6-line manifesto be submitted in its entirety, with the wording that would be used to create the sodality, so that we can give our best response to what such a group would mean for the Empire. This also means that rather than the current situation, where we have listed changes to the manifesto that would increase or decrease the powers of a sodality, we'll be able to issue that guidance in character before the Imperial sodality is created, meaning that any changes can be made before the Senate motion creating the sodality is presented. Die Beurteilungsbetrieb. Professor Gelberg remains committed to working with the patron of the Beurteilung until at least winter 388YE. Last spring, the Senate endorsed the visiting Commonwealth academic Professor Emanuel Gelberg. With the support of the University of Volkovar, the professor brought a cadre of scholars, engineers, and students to the Empire to offer their services to imperial citizens as a way to raise funds for the war against Yarm. They have established Die Beurteilung, a kind of freelance appraisal team whose services are secured through imperial auction, and offered their expertise in a variety of situations. They are also, by all accounts, greatly enjoying the warm reception they have received and the chance to explore the Empire. With recent events in the East, there is some discussion about whether Gelberg and his peers will return home to help against Cold Sun. When asked directly, Gelberg shrugs and opines that a handful of academics are not going to make any more difference in a war against an Eternal than they would in a war against Yarm, and that they serve their country best by continuing to strengthen ties and sympathy in the Empire. And by making money, of course. As such, the patron of the Beurteilung title will continue to remain available to the Empire's citizens until at least the end of the winter solstice 388YE. The Sweetwater scenario. Elian Sweetwater remains unaccounted for. One final matter relates to the whereabouts of beloved prognosticator and former researcher Elian Sweetwater. He and his small team disappeared during the Grendel attack on Redoubt, which unfortunately started just as they arrived at the fallen lighthouse at Nikephoros. There has been no concrete news about his whereabouts, although rumour has begun to spread that the eternal Kobel Tava alluded during the autumn parley to either having Elian in custody or having provided them a sanctuary, or perhaps even having consumed him and his associated, depending which version of the story one listens to. For now, Gerard LaSalle is obviously concerned and interested in hearing from anyone who might have any concrete information about his whereabouts.